welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we are a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction for recovery for yourself or for a loved one, or you're actively in recovery, maybe a short time or even a long time, many years, you're going to find all kinds of information related to addiction, recovery, and living a happy and successful sober life at Recovery Today. My name is Rob Hannley. I'm the producer of Recovery Today magazine, and I have the privilege of being joined again by another really, really cool guest. This one from the other side of the pond, that is over in the UK, Mr. Michael Maisey. Forgive me, by the way, I should have asked you if that's how you pronounce your name. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Michael. He is an actor. He's an author, and his life story he's put together in a book called Young Offender. It's going to be released in the UK in July. We're going to watch that closely, and also in the United States in October. And then briefly about his childhood, briefly about him, difficult childhood, physical, sexual abuse, single parent, battling alcoholism, kind of the same kind of story that we hear from so many people as a teenager, crime, etc. And now he's doing some really, really great things, 11 years sober, family, 2 daughters, happily married, etc. And I just loved his story when we connected, so wanted to bring you on and interview you. So thanks so much, Michael, for jumping on.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. That's a great intro.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So I guess starting out, I kind of set it up a little bit in terms of your bio and stuff, and in terms of who you are, but you know, kind of an easy question for me always is like, you know, so tell me your story a little bit. So I kind of started out there. I think a lot of people say, like, that's my story or close to it, but, you know, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So my mum came from a Romany Gypsy background. So I don't know if I'm not too sure if you have them over there in the States, but
no.
Basically, primarily it's people who live in caravans traveling from site to site.
Wow.
So my mum was basically a gypsy, and she basically left Ireland when she was about 16, came to London with no money, and worked in different hotels in central London, and then she met my dad. My dad came from like a broken home as well, alcohol, you know, domestic violence, that sort of stuff. And so they met, and, you know, I guess their story was almost like they were perfect for each other. My mum always looked for protection, and she had this from my father, but my father had an addiction. My mum was an alcoholic, and so the relationship, although it had a lot of passion, it ended very quickly. Before I was the age of 1, my dad had left. We'd moved home 3 or 4 times. And in the middle of like growing up in this home where my father wasn't around, there was no male around. It was just like a typical alcoholic home. Lots of stuff going on, lots of people coming and going, and one of them people was my uncle, who was from an Irish travelling community as well. He experienced sexual abuse when he was a kid, and so the sexual abuse started there. It started with physical abuse, like intimidation, and then it leaked into sexual abuse as well. And then just one day he just left, and you know, and so I grew up an angry young kid. Like I had this moment when and I look back on this with hindsight, where I decided this universe isn't a friendly place. And the ones who hurt you the most are the ones that are closest to you. And you can't trust the people that you're meant to be able to love. You can't trust them. And so I had to create some strategy to survive in that world. And what I created was almost like a security guard. Was this tough, crazy kid that you had to get through this kid before you were going to get to the scared little boy hiding behind him.
Yeah.
And so that's who a lot of people met, you know, in school, and certainly when I got older, a lot of people met the tough, scary guy. And then it was funny because in the middle of all of this, I got cast as a character called Wordsworth in our school play. And it was for the first time in my life where I was about 8 or 9 years old at the time, and I didn't have to be the security guard. I didn't have to be the scared little boy. I got to be this new character with no problems, who was just normal. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. And off the back of that performance, there was a part came up in a TV show, which was a pretty well-known TV show here in the UK called Birds of a Feather. And I got a part in that. And to the outside world, I looked like a normal kid who had good opportunities, who looked like he was going somewhere. But no one knew what I'd gone through at home and what had been going on behind the scenes. And so when I was 15, I first discovered alcohol and drugs when I was about 11 or 12. And really, it just took away all that noise in my head, all that constant, like, just replaying all the trauma. It took it away. And I became addicted to that feeling. I became addicted to escaping reality, basically, you know. Mm-hmm. And I had lots of evidence that that was what you'd done, because I looked at my dad, which at that time, he was a fully blown heroin addict. I mean, he still is a heroin addict till today. My mum was an alcoholic, and so when I thought, what do I do when you're finding things tough emotionally? You just check out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I fell into crime at quite a young age. I was, you know, arrested for armed robbery and possession of firearms at the age of 15, which, like, in London back then was a big deal. There wasn't many 15-year-old armed robbers back then. And then, you know, shortly after, ended up going to prison for another offence, which was attempted murder. And then came out, and then went back into prison, and then came out, and then went back into prison. And it was like, I was really close to just being like a statistic, like another kid from a bad home who just spends his life in and out of prison. And then, yeah, it was funny. It was on my last stint in prison. My mum came to visit me, and she said, I'm sober. And, you know, like, I didn't really believe her, if I'm being honest with you, because she said it so many times. I'm sober now, son, I'm changing and all this. And then, you know, she'd be drinking a few days later. But over the course of, you know, 2 or 3 months, she'd come and visit me. And eventually I realized actually something's quite different about her. She actually is sober. And so I made a commitment when I got out of prison. I said, I'm going to come to one of these meetings. And I think, like, mostly I went there to support her. She was, like, excited about her new recovery, and it was all this new thing. And I didn't want to, like, you know, put a dark cloud over it. So part of it, I was going for her. And I went to this meeting and just felt like I was too young, really. I was 18. And I think the nearest guy to me was, I think, 32. And I was just like, I'm not one of these guys, you know. Although I related to what a lot of people went through emotionally, the rock bottoms, emotionally feeling alone when you could be in a room full of friends, I related to all that. But my perception up here of what an alcoholic looks like is someone who sleeps on a park bench.
Right.
And so, like, it was really hard for me. And, like, my mum drank every day. Every day she drank. And so in my head, I was like, that's an alcoholic. If I'm drinking every day, then I need to be here. And I was never that. I was just a binge drinker. I used to have a drink on a Friday night. Sometimes it would go right through to Saturday morning, and I'd get into fights, and I'd cause mayhem, and I'd get arrested, and, you know, I went to prison. But none of that was important. It was just, I just looked at the differences. I didn't sleep on a park bench. I didn't drink every day. And so I spent from the age of 18 to the age of 25 floating around trying to, like, find a different way, trying to, you know, maybe these guys at the meetings have missed something. And then eventually that was it. Age 25, I was just like, I just need to do what everyone else is doing. I need to go to meetings, get a sponsor, do the steps. And so, yeah, that's what I'd done. I threw the towel in age 25, and yeah, it was hard, because for me it was like, what am I going to do on a Friday night? What am I going to do on a Saturday night? Most of my friend circle has to go, because most of them drink. Actually, all of them drank, and it was hard. But I got heavily into service, and obviously, because of my background, having spent so much time in prison, you know, a lot of people wanted me to go into prison and give talks to young people in prison, and so I'd done loads of that. And then in 2014, I got approached by the London Borough of Hounslow and the Metropolitan Police. They said, we hold these annual award ceremonies for people who are making a real difference in the world. And so, you know, I went along to this award ceremony thinking, you know, I'm probably, you know, got some, you know, really rubbish award. And it was funny because everyone else took their families and friends there. It was a really big deal for a lot of people. I just rocked up on my own because I was convinced I would probably just get some lame award at the end of the night. It turned out my award was one of the biggest awards there. And I felt like, yeah, it was incredible. I mean, the guy who presented the award to me was the chief superintendent of the Metropolitan Police in London, which was just crazy, you know, like...
How ironic.
Record, you know, it's just got a massive criminal record, and it was just...
Right.
it was just surreal. And I got this award, and I felt the sadness around it, that, you know, here I think I was about 5 years sober, but my low self-esteem was still really there, playing out in my life. Like, a part of me still didn't... It still didn't feel like I deserved that award. I still didn't believe that I deserved it, you know, so I was battling all of that, but unconsciously, I didn't know I was battling that. And so, yeah, I got that award, and then, you know, I set up a business, and then the business done well, and then I still got the business, and then I said, you know, what do I want to do with my life now? I've got, you know, two things I want to do. I'd love to go back to acting, and I'd love to, you know, share this story with the world. And so I tried to write the book myself, like really couldn't do it, found it too painful. And then it was really random. I've got a friend who's a pretty famous actor. He's called Tom Hardy. And he said to me, one day he randomly said to me, how's the book coming along? Have you written that book yet? And I was like, I'd heard from lots of people tell me you should really write this book. But it was hearing it from him, I was like, you really think I should write this book, don't you? He was like, yeah, you should. Even if it only helps one person, you should write this book. And I remember I went away and I was like, shit, if Tom believes it, man, I need to write this book. And so, I knew I couldn't write it myself. And I got on my knees. I said to my higher power, I choose to call it God, help me out here. I want to write this book and I don't know what to do. And it was approaching, I think it's about 3 years ago, and it was approaching my birthday, and we was flying out to Norway, me and my wife, for my birthday. As a birthday celebration. Anyway, fly out to Norway. It's our last night in Norway. We're coming home the next day, and we're eating food in this restaurant, and at the end of the meal, they bring out these local berries, right, to taste. They're only grown in this certain part of Norway. And so anyway, they bring them out. I taste them. We're paying for the bill. And they bring the same pot of berries out to the table next to us. Now, bearing in mind, this is a Norwegian restaurant full of Norwegian people, right? And this lady next to me in a really posh British accent says, excuse me, what are them berries like? And my answer was like, yeah, they're not great. And she was like, oh, I think I'll leave it then. And then I was like, oh, you're from London? And she was like, yes, I'm from London. And so this conversation starts. And anyway, cut a long story short, she was a best-selling author, Chrissy Manby. She's published loads of books, right? And so when she disclosed that information, I was like, wow, that's my higher power looking after me.
Right.
So I tell her my story, and she's like, when we get back to London, I'm going to help you write this book. Wow.
From just an encounter in Norway?
We just met in Norway, yeah. So we got back to London. We got the book deal then with Pan Macmillan. And here we are, 3 years later, the book's coming out in a few months. So, yeah. And that's it. That's my life. I've got 2 kids who've never seen me drink or use drugs. I'm married. And I do acting. I do it because I love it, and I do a lot of service still. I help a lot of men as well.
So thanks for really filling that in. And by the way, you're a very good storyteller too. Not boring in any way at all. I love the end of it and the, coincidence. I don't think there are coincidences. I think that God, higher power. I think that I've heard things before, like if you just kind of surrender a little bit, like the universe or God is conspiring for your best interest, And so I love that kind of a thing. And then I'm a big believer in prayer as well, that if you get what you ask for, I think quite often. Like you, by the way, I have 2 kids. Mine is 17 and 15. And
Wow.
in July, I'll be 21 years married to my
Wow.
only wife,
Yeah.
and which is an accomplishment in today's society. But my wife has never known, nor have my kids ever known, a dad that drank or did drugs at all. So I was 3 years sober, actually, when I had met my wife, who actually is a social drinker, by the way. Just, doesn't have the propensity, gene, whatever you want to say. She can drink wine. We go out, she'll have a couple of drinks, no problem whatsoever,
Same as mine. Mine's the same.
I think, not to tell on my family too much, but I think my daughter is the same way, like absolutely none. My son, on the other hand, I'll say I have concerns about, type of a thing. But that leads me really to kind of the whole kind of getting into the psychological stuff, and I would say kind of like the root cause, because you really hit on it. Like, the abuse part I get, and by the way, anybody that ever encountered that, I just want to say, as another human being, I'm sorry that happened to you, because it's not even something that's like self-inflicted, that you started drinking or doing drugs or something on your own. It's something that is so external and vile and bad. So I'm just sorry that happened. And I'm also really grateful, because I'm a believer that you can break the cycle in whatever it is that you're doing. And that's really, everything that we do in recovery today is something that should, it's dark matter that we're dealing with here, but really it should have an uplift of hope. And so we always look to spotlight things that are hopeful. I loved that your kids had never, one of the things you wrote me originally is that my kids had never known. I can relate to that. My wife, and I think you mentioned you've started several businesses successfully. I see a whole row of awards there. I see a bookshelf full of books. So this is the kind of thing that is difficult when we evangelize to any kind of an addict, somebody that's been sober a day, or maybe they're not sober at all and they're watching right now, is the whole idea that you get your life back. And it can be much better than you even think you deserve. And so that kind of leads me into, like, I guess I'd say, what do you think kind of is the root cause of this? Like, is it wiring? Is it environment? Is it both? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's good arguments on both sides, isn't there? There's arguments that it's genetics, and then there's arguments that it's the environment you grow up in. And, the truth is I don't really know exactly what it is, but I knew that I was addicted to escaping reality from a young age. Like, when I was really young, I would just disassociate. So I'd just I'd be staring at the window watching a fly bang off the window trying to escape. I could just stare at it for ages. And so, I was just escaping reality. I was trying to escape the thoughts and the trauma in my mind. Now, would I have been like that if there wasn't any trauma prior? I'm not too sure, because both of my parents are addicts.
Yeah,
there's a high chance I could have been. So I'm really not sure. But I think I can only speak for myself, is it's not my fault what happened to me, but it's my responsibility to figure out how I'm going to not repeat the same mistakes and live a good life.
I love that, because I think that there's kind of a need at some time to kind of do some emotional, spiritual, probably surgery on people, and to excise a thorn or a sliver, whatever you want to say, a boil, lance that thing, get a tumor, cut it out, get it out, my mother, this, that, and then you can have release things emotionally that we carry around, I think cellularly in our whole body, actually. I think it's a spiritual cloud that follows us around, quite honestly. But I also am about solution-oriented. One thing that I like a lot I remind myself quite often. I think to myself, am I up to the challenge? I accept that challenge, I'll tell myself masculinely. I don't know, maybe females too. But there's a story of two guys, and they're standing on their porch, and they're both watching a tornado or a hurricane come in. And one of them, and they're a block away or something like that. They both have families and stuff. And one of them is like, why me? There's a hurricane, whatever it was, what am I going to do? Please, God, make it go away, all these kind of things, cursing and cussing. And they're all like thinking about, I'm about to get screwed and this is so unfair, right? And the other guy looks at the hurricane or the tornado and he goes, holy shit. I got to get my family out of here right now. We're going to fucking be killed. Excuse my language, but, we're going to die. Everybody grab all your important shit. Let's load it in the car. We got to haul ass, right? So whatever your situation is, that like, well, what can I do right this minute? Because there's some things you can control, and then there's some things that you cannot control. So I love a solution-oriented, like I've been screwed, I've been this and that, and I got a raw deal. My mom's a gypsy, my suckers, I've been in and out of prison, but like, what am I going to do right now? Like, what the fuck? Like, what am I going to do today? That's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, and like, I agree. And my propensity to want to do the work is dictated by the level of pain I feel within me. So,
Wow, I like that. That's good. So
when I first went to my first meeting at the age of 18, and someone said to me, have you had enough? And I was like, I wasn't sure, really. You know what I mean? And I don't think I had enough. When I went back at the age of 25, someone said, have you had enough? And I was like, yes, I've had enough. But he said, but are you willing to go to any lengths? I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, well, that means that you're not ready to go to any lengths. The fact that I'd asked that question. And, it takes a while. I had to really beat the crap out of myself long enough to be like, I'm so sick to death of this. I have to just try something different. And that's been a theme of my recovery. I'm a bit of a knucklehead. I have to learn the hard way. Pain is my teacher. And so I had to have a few failed relationships to look at why I'm having failed relationships in recovery. I had to almost go completely broke and bankrupt to learn how to manage money. That's just how I learn, but it's like, how much pain do you have to feel before you get to the point where you want to learn? And for me, the pain threshold is quite high because I experienced a lot of pain as a child. So I can take a lot of pain for a long period of time. So where I'm at today is that I just choose to not let the pain get too severe, not let the consequences get too severe, and just maintain a daily program that keeps myself in check.
What is your program, by the way? How's your day start out daily?
So I get up in the mornings. I send gratitude lists to like loads of people. Obviously, you see me on social media. I'm really active, and loads of people reach out to me, and they're sort of struggling with life, mental health. And the first thing I say is, okay, let's focus on some of the stuff you do have. Like your eyesight. Not everyone's got their eyesight.
They don't.
Some people, got one leg blown off in war. So for me, every day I respond to all the messages I get. From guys I sponsor and stuff like that, gratitude list. So straight away, I start the day with gratitude. Get up, have breakfast with the kids, sort all that out. I meditate. I do Wim Hof breath work.
I love Wim Hof.
Yeah, Wim Hof's the legend.
I love Wim Hof, man.
I love him.
If you don't know who Wim Hof is, for those listening, you got to go and Google Wim, W-I-M-H-O-F-F. And he is the guy that climbed Mount Everest in his bathing suit, straight up. Isn't that right? I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. And he ran a marathon in the Sahara Desert with no water.
And he ran a marathon 150 miles north of the polar ice cap or whatever it is, barefoot for, I think, half of it. Then he put on sandals, I think, in his bathing suit.
Yeah.
Smoked a cigarette afterwards. He smoked a cigarette and had a beer and had like some ribs after like 10 minutes after he finished it. The guy is crazy. Love Wim Hof. So anyhow, Wim Hof.
He's great. That guy, yeah, really check him out, because for me, that breath work, not only is it really good physically, for me, it's really good mentally. It really gets myself in a good space. And I think a bit of it is like dedicating 15 minutes every day to become a better version of you. So there's a good bit of self-esteem building in that. But
correct,
for me, I do the Wim Hof breathing. I follow that up with meditation. And the meditation is really just letting...
Is it prayer or is it just silent?
So I do like a little prayer before I go into my meditation. I hand this day over to you, you know, like help me be a better person, help me, you know, help others, not think of myself. But the main chunk is like a 10-minute meditation where it's my time to just set a 10-minute timer, and whatever thoughts come, just let them come, you know, and any messages I'm getting from the universe or my higher power, I just let that stuff come in. And if it's good, I hold it. If it's not good, I let it go. Almost like clouds passing in the sky. If it's good, I might take it down, take something from it. If it's not, I just let it pass. And that's my program. You know, I eat pretty well. You know, I make sure I eat good food, look after my body. I exercise, and like obviously, you know, helping others, and you know, it's a huge part of it as well.
So I'm guessing that I'm thinking those medals are, you're a runner. What? Tell me a little bit about your medals behind you.
Yeah, so I've done like 2 marathons. I've done like 5 or 6 half marathons, and then I've done. You guys got Spartan races over there, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We have, yeah. So I've done a ton of Spartans, Tough Mudders.
Cool, man.
Triathlons. I'm a triathlete as well. I've done them. So
very
they're
cool.
all good things to do for me. You know, like growing up in the world I grew up in, no one done stuff like that. So I always have challenges like that going on, because it's a good thing to work towards, and it's good self-esteem building.
We had an interesting feature last year in Recovery Today where I'm trying to think of his name is. I'll think of it here in a moment. But we followed him for 5 months, this guy, as he ran across the United States. He left New York. And he ran, he's only one of like 250 people. He ran every day between 25 and 40 miles every single day, 7 days a week for 5 months, from New York to Venice Beach, actually. Coolest guy, all about recovery. He wasn't even in recovery. He had a family member, and he would engage people in these little hick towns and say, hey, is it recovery? What's addiction? So love the whole idea of running. Favorite book on the bookshelf back there? What's your favorite book? I love people that readers are leaders. So what are you inspired by?
So the first book I read ever in my whole life was when I was about 6 months sober, and it's called Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount. So it's basically like my first sponsor. He's like almost 50 years sober now, but he knew loads of stuff about, you know, AA and the early beginnings of AA. And he was like, I want you to read this book. And so I always go back to that book. It's a great book. It taught me a lot. And it takes little bits out of the Bible, kind of, for me, translates it into a language I understand.
Sermon on the Mount, right? Sermon on the Mount?
Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox, yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. So your kids, are you concerned at all about passing the gene on? Not to give like any kind of privacy thing, but what do you educate your children on then for addiction and recovery and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, my kids are only 7 and 5, so I don't talk too much about that stuff yet. They know I don't drink though, and like the way I see it is, they may potentially have it, but they're in the best position possible, that they've got someone like me who's well equipped to know how to handle it, how to work with it, how to help them. So, I think if it comes to that, I'll do it. I've done lots of work with Al-Anon around acceptance, because obviously having a heroin addict father, I had to really practice complete acceptance over that person. So I feel like I'm well equipped to handle it, but ultimately, if that's the route they go down, I'm powerless. I can just do my best as being a dad.
Yeah, I'm just really big mentally myself, and by the way, I'm compelled to almost bring up the Wim Hof stuff again, because one of the things I liked about it was he talked about that breathing actually being a cure, if you will, or whatever the word is, for depression and anxiety, of which I've dealt with a lot. I didn't realize I'm 54, but I realized actually I had massive anxiety when I was like a nervous break, all the time when I was in my 20s. It was very hard, paralyzing to do things, but I forced myself to do things. But I just felt never, like, what's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Like, what, now I know I am a little crazy. But in that, the breathing, I think, really helps with that. But then I'm really big in controlling every single thing that I can control and letting go of everything else. So one thing I like personally in my own morning routine, although I didn't do it today, is make the bed. So somebody said one time it makes you feel good. It actually releases doing things and accomplishing goals, even tiny goals. I'm sure, like, you're smiling, so I'm sure we're on exactly the same page here. It actually releases dopamine, which makes you happy. Okay, like if I have and I would think to myself sometimes in depression, why am I so sad? Like, this sucks. This sucks balls that I'm just naturally sad. But okay, I have to work hard then to feel okay. So then if I think, well, how does it work? It's dopamine. So the smallest goal, you make the bed, and it gives you a little hit, right? Well, I like that. That feels good. And then it compels you to do the next thing. Maybe you go to the workout, So the more things you can tick off the list, maybe it's Wim Hof breathing for 5 minutes. Maybe it's meditating for 5. It sets up this cascade. Have you ever heard of the book, The Spiral Upward, by chance?
No, I haven't, no.
It's a great book, Spiral Upward, plug for the book there. But it's all about what I'm talking about right now, like small things. I mean, could you ever conceive that you would be running marathons? Like when you were young, you probably thought you'd be dead, right? Or just in jail forever?
Yeah, right. I mean, even when I got sober, I felt that I'd battered my body so much that I'd never be able to complete a marathon. So, it's incredible.
Well, I'd love to keep talking to you for a while. I know, my apologies for starting a little bit late today because there's so many different things. I can just tell, even talking to you, that we're on the same page with a lot of stuff, and I know that there's a lot of really cool and cool information that I'd like to get out. So, but tell us again. First of all, I looked at your IMDb and whatever it was, a couple of reels that you had for acting. Are you acting now? Are you on a show? I don't know, a show in the United States. Are you in the UK somewhere?
Yeah, so there's 2 feature films that are being worked on at the minute. One of them is called Sparrow's Call, which is going to be a psychological thriller. Not too sure if it'll be screened in the US, although it has got distribution rights for the US, so it might be. I presume if it does really well here, it might get screened there, but it will certainly be available for download on Netflix and stuff like that. And then the other one is a film that I've written myself. It's a short film about alcoholism, addiction. So I'm putting that together myself because although there's a lot of great stuff out there, I stand for, if you want to see a change in the world, then be that change. And so a big thing for me in the acting world was that I felt there's not enough stuff highlighting the stuff around alcoholism and addiction, right? So I was like, well, what are you going to do about it? You can do something about it. So I was like, well, write a film and, fund it yourself. So that's another thing that I'm working on.
I know that the traditions, as they say, to keep this quiet and stuff like that, and I think that had a place in the church basements and so forth. But I think that it is really important for people to understand that this is like obviously we call it a disease. We like to call it a socially contagious disease, particularly with opiates, that anybody, anywhere, it doesn't matter, you're not a guy on the park bench like you're saying. It can affect somebody that went to Oxford, that went to the city college, that didn't go to any college, that didn't, anybody at all. It doesn't care. You're a soccer mom. It doesn't care. And you wouldn't shun people that have tuberculosis or pneumonia. You'd actually embrace them. And so we try to be very pushing a message forward to reframe this for other people and change the stigma intentionally connect with, because I think that's the underlying cause, I think, of personally. Although I think it's a spiritual disease too, but I think its underlying cause is a lack of connection and purpose. People have to have a purpose in their life, like some freaking goal or something, you know, in their life. Think of something. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, yeah. I think, you know, I call mine a mission. So, you know, I think everyone should have a mission in life. And I think, in particular, if you're men in recovery, and this is, you know, something that I've done, I attended a weekend workshop called the New Warrior Training Adventure. It's run by a company called the Mankind Project. And anyway, you can't say exactly what happens on this weekend, but it's a great thing to do, you know, and you end up, it's life-changing, yeah, and the whole theme of it is that you leave with a mission. And what is your mission in the world? You know, what do you stand for? You know,
and there has to be one thing that you stand for, or several things that you, above everything, right? There has to be some kind of something that you, I love that you stand for something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like having something to aim for. It's like if you aim for nothing, you're going to hit it every time. You know, so at least aim for something. You know, strive for something, you know. So, you know, my mission is I inspire men to become better versions of themselves by using all the tools I have to hand. So, you know, that's that's my mission. So I live my life that way.
That's short, succinct. That's a good one, man. I like that. We're going to put that actually in the article here somewhere. Where can people connect with you? If somebody's going, man, I like this guy, like where can they connect with, and how can I be of service to you to be of service to other people?
So I've got a book being released in July. You can find that on Amazon.com. Just search my name, Michael Maisey. You can also find me on social media at Mr. Maisey, Mistermaisey. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Got some stuff on YouTube as well. And just reach out. You know, like I'm quite active on all my socials. I respond to everyone. If you're struggling, reach out to me. I also put together a free online program. I fund the whole thing myself. So it doesn't matter if you're at real rock bottom, you've got no money and you just need some help. There's a free online program. Just click the link in my bio. And, you know, like, I believe we can make the world a better place just by, you know, communicating and connecting. Like you said it a minute ago, there's a lack of connection, and I think you're right. You know, let's connect. Let's use social media for what it's for, connecting people.
And people have to know, by the way, if you've got an addict or somebody like that you love, an Al-Anon type of thing, it's important, I think, that you tell them, you know, don't enable them, but tell them that they're important to you, that they're valuable to you, and that you love them. You know, I know there's a lot of different things to that, manipulation that happens, and there's a lot of different stuff, but connection is very important, I think, as well. So I just thank you for your time. I know that it's late on a Friday evening here as we're recording this. We'll have links to everything here. We'll be happy to talk about your book when it comes out to help you promote it. We'll put it on our Instagram and whatnot as well. So this has been another great recording, or a great interview, I'd like to think, with new friend Michael Maisey here from over in the UK. If you're in the UK, for sure, look the guy up. And if you're not, anyhow, connect with him on social. So, Michael, thanks so much. Hang on just a minute, and I will stop the recording.